in the current hit them style of play for high school lacrosse athletes, if you were a high school lacrosse coach, how would you demote that style of play?
Well, first of all, in lacrosse, it's really important to understand that as you're developing as a player, it's more of a skill game. It's more about learning the game, and really hitting is a small aspect of the game. You know, most big hits that you see in the college game are usually called as penalties. So if you're teaching hitting too much, really you're not concentrating on the most important aspects of the game, you know, including going after the ground balls, playing solid individual defense with your feet, you know, and just understanding the game well, because there's very rare instances at the high levels where you're actually going to get a chance to really hit someone hard. So the whole hit 'em mentality is kind of something that stems over from football, but may not be necessarily the greatest thing to learn in lacrosse, especially at the younger age levels. And, you know, as far as looking at, you know, safety related issues and concussions, you know, lacrosse helmets are not made for big hits, and so to protect your players and to respect your opponents, it makes sense to you know, play the game the way it's meant to be played. You can still play tough and physical without killing guys out there.
All right, and if you could take everything that you know about concussions and apply it to the beginning of your goalie years and playing goalie, starting at Princeton and moving on from there and whatnot, if anything you could change, what would you change about how you participated with or without concussions?
Well, you know, when I was going through it, there wasn't much education out there on concussions. I had 12 concussions over the course of my career. A lot of those concussions were kind of minor concussions. I didn't, you know, lose consciousness, or they weren't too big of hits, but they kind of just kept piling up, and I'd have headaches afterwards, and I'd feel kind of groggy and slow in class and stuff like that. So the thing I'd probably go back and do over is really making sure I was fully healed before going back out and playing again until I was completely healed. You can kind of get the sense with concussions of feeling like you're kind of better. It's kind of like with a sprained ankle, you can go out and play when it still hurts and it's still getting better. With concussions, you can't do that. You have to be fully healed, or you're just going to hurt yourself further. So I would have done that. I also, you know, I loved on the 2006 World Games when we got to wear those Riddell helmets. I wish, you know, I could have had a better protecting helmet my entire career. That Riddell helmet felt so much better on my head. It just was heavier duty. It fit my head better, and I know there were two of us on that team that had dealt with concussions a lot. It was myself and Jay Jalbert. Both of us had to retire from concussions, and both of us were blown away by how much better protected we were with that helmet. So I just wish there were better helmets, and I wish I had kind of taken care of myself better after getting concussions.
Having said that, based on your experience, what advice would you give for players recovering from concussions?
Well, like I said in that last answer, take your time recovering from them. Make sure you're fully healed before you go back out. You know, the thing to think about is protect yourself from getting big concussions. You know, don't put your head down on hits. Make sure your helmet fits well. Make sure you have the best helmet available. Don't do anything stupid off the field. Like one of my worst concussions was getting a bad concussion going off a huge ski jump on my snowboard with no helmet on, and that wasn't really helpful. So kind of being smart and taking care of your head, because they can't replace your brain, you know, and it's a very, you know, one of the hardest things for me with my last concussion that I had in lacrosse was I didn't feel like I was a functioning human being. I was depressed. I was struggling to concentrate on just basic things in life, and that was really scary for me, and it made me realize that we really got to take good care of our brains, no matter what we're doing, whether it's playing sports or off-field activities, and if we do get hurt, we got to make sure we're really nursing ourselves back to health and taking good care of ourselves.
After knowing how many concussions you had and how you just said when you felt groggy and stuff in school,
Right.
and you knew how much time to take off, could you diagnose when you got one for yourself because you knew yourself well enough, or was that really not the case?
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting part about concussions is I was fortunate enough to be at Princeton University when I first started getting my concussions, and at Princeton, one of the leading experts in concussions is there, Dr. Margot Patukian, and the interesting part is that doctors really can't tell you that much with concussions. It really is up to you how you're feeling, and letting doctors know what's going on for you. And what a lot of people do is they'll be like, well, I just have a slight headache, or well, I just feel a little bit foggy. But the thing that I noticed the most when I had a concussion was something just didn't feel right. I woke up in the morning, something felt off, and it's really hard to explain until you go through it, but once you heal, it's like you wake up that morning and you're like, oh, I'm fully better, and it's just very crystal clear. So you just have to be really careful. It's like I said before, with other injuries, you can kind of play through some pain, and that's not what you want to do with concussions. You want to make sure it's all gone, you're feeling 100%, and that's the only way to go back out on the field.
And as you said earlier about the Riddell, what would you recommend to players to promote protection from concussions?
Well, I wish we could get Riddell or a football helmet company to get back in the business of making lacrosse helmets and design them well and market them in a way that makes people understand that that's the type of helmet we need to protect our heads and play in a physical sport like lacrosse. I mean, lacrosse in a lot of ways is just as physical as football. So I think that type of helmet is the way to go, and I've tried to reach out to certain people to see if there are ways to get that type of helmet back in production. But it's challenging because what happened was when that helmet came out, people didn't want to wear it because it was too heavy, or it was not cool enough, or it didn't have that image. But the bottom line is we should be using helmets that protect us the best. So it's a tricky, it's a tough battle to win for those guys.
And lastly, do you think it's important to implement a universal checklist for players with symptoms of concussions and mandatory baseline tests, say for a high school or a college?
Yeah, I think those baseline tests are really important. The checklists are also great for people to have kind of like you said, a baseline of where they're at without concussions. But I think the real problem with all that stuff is, maybe you can squeeze by a test, but you're still not feeling right. So the bottom line is you have to take care of yourself by making sure you're feeling 100%, and then also passing those tests as well. So to me, the most important thing is being honest with yourself, being honest with the doctors, your coaches, and also coaches and trainers being responsible in making sure that they really press people to let them know how they're feeling, exactly how they're feeling.